Now, you know I say pick a lane and you can't have it both ways. Well, I sort of feel like that's on me today. Because I'm going to call somebody out for doing something that I've accused Jonathan Brash, Stephen Morgan, Bridget Phillipson, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer of not doing. So I am going to call them out for doing what they've done, but I'm going to say, even though they've done it really badly, well done for at least attempting to do it. Did any of that make any sense? Probably not. So effectively, we've got a Labour councillor who has actually responded on X to beef. And it's brilliant. I mean, I love a bit of ex-beef. So this Labour councillor has responded to certain things publicly. And that's what none of the others do. They literally pull the pin, throw the grenade, and then they're not seen for dust. So in some ways, I say good for her, because she is at least publicly owning what she thinks. The issue is, I'm not sure she's joined the dots in what she thinks to make any real coherent sense. And it gets a bit nasty, it gets a bit mudslingy, it gets a bit but I'm going to read it out to you because I think you'll find it interesting. So it comes from an article, it stems from an article in the Telegraph, which is middle class children to be shut out of the best schools in Labour equality crackdown. And the person that posts this says, and so Labour's attack on middle class children continues. And then in comes our Labour councillor, Adele Barnett-Ward. She says, how do you think it should work? Should children who have been in the state system all along and been allocated their place according to the rules be forced to move to schools to make space for queue jumpers from the private sector? So, obviously, this opens up the absolute floodgates. Who talked about queue jumping? Did anyone say they were queue jumping? Where did that come from? And now we're concerned about children having to move schools. So we're concerned about the children in the state sector having to move schools. But we've been saying all along that it's absolutely fine for the kids in the independent sector to move schools. Do you remember when we first started talking about VAT and it was suggested to Labour that this could be disastrous for the children that was involved? And Labour were like, it's absolutely fine. Kids move schools all the time. Well, not if you're in state school, then it's not so fine. So this is what Adele's saying. She's saying, this is harmful for those kids. And then she's accusing the independent sector of queue jumping, which again is ironic, given in the past year, we've seen the perfect example of state queue jumping from our own leader, Keir Starmer, who was able to jump the queue to get his kids into effectively the state prep in his area by buying a £3 million house. So he bought that £3 million house. I mean, it could have been more than that, could have been less than that, but that's roughly what those houses sell for in that area. He bought that house where the catchment area for the school was about that long. So if you can afford that house, you're in. Yay, well done you. And you can mix with all the other children that have got that much money to spend on their houses. If you're that long and a bit further out and you're in rented accommodation or housing association accommodation or any of that, you're not in because you don't go in the catchment area. So, there's queue jumping in that style. And then, of course, there's the traditional queue jumping of suddenly converting to Catholicism so that you can get into the local Catholic school. And then there's the other one, which is, well, we've got this lovely house here, but it's not in the catchment area of that lovely school there. So we're going to rent one and we're going to pretend that we live in that one. And then when we've got the place, we'll just go back to that one and nobody will notice. That's kind of like the traditional queue jumping. The queue jumping that I think she's talking about is when Labour imposed VAT on education in January, not September, in January. They said it was going to be September, but they did it in January. When they did that, parents had to apply for school places and they had to get wherever they could get at the last minute because they hadn't had time to get their ducks in a row. What they thought they were working towards was September was in fact in January. So their kids were sort of placed on an emergency list of, right, okay, well, they've got to get a place and we've got to put them in school. But it's weird, isn't it? Because Labour said we can cope with this. Don't worry about this. There's no problem. We've got loads of spaces. I don't know why. I mean, I think Bridget Phillipson said the private parents were hysterical. They were being absolutely hysterical about this. Somebody accused them of whining to the courts. I mean, all the niceties. But turns out there are no places. And if we have a look at how there are no places and how we know that, there's lots of articles that suggest this, and one of them is from you always want to find something and the minute you click on it it goes, but one of them was from a local councillor in Buckinghamshire saying schools are absolutely crumbling, we have no spaces whatsoever. So the state school system has been completely trashed by the VAT on education policy, but nobody wants to admit that. So what Adele is doing is she's accusing people of jumping the queue and then everyone piles in and goes, what are you talking about? How can you jump the queue? How have you got to the bit where they've actually jumped anything? What they've done is been displaced from their own school and they've had to go into the state system. So at some point, whilst all of this is going on, it turns out that Adele went to an independent school. So the woman who is actively opposing independent schools and accusing the kids that have been displaced from their independent schools of queue jumping into the state sector is from an independent school. I mean, I wonder if it was heavy when she was lifting the ladder behind her and whether she popped the cork of the champagne at the same time. I don't know, just wondering. But it seems slightly disingenuous to be posting all of these posts and not admitting that you yourself went to an independent school, and she did go to an independent school. So it kind of, you can't take it seriously anymore, can you? Because you're like, whoa, hang on, which face have we got? Somebody said something really good the other day. It was a comment on one of these videos and they said, my mum used to say they've got more faces than the town hall clock. I love that. So I think Adele's got more faces than the town hall clock. I'll link the thread to this. You can have a read. It's quite interesting. But the overarching point is this policy has not only not worked, but now what we're seeing is the fallout from it and how this is affecting all the kids in the state system. And it's affecting the kids in the state system really quite badly. And it's affecting the kids in the independent system really quite badly. So there's been absolutely no winners. And the winners, of course, isn't the Treasury either, because it's not earning any money. And all of those people in the state system that were sold this manifesto, they may have voted for Labour based on this manifesto because they were told that it was going to raise money to go into the state system. They've been sold a dummy because it's not raising any money, and the money that it's not raising is going into social housing. So that's a manifesto lie, isn't it? Because the pledge was 6,500 teachers and lots of money to make state great again. And actually it's going into social housing. It's not making any money. State schools being flooded by kids from the independent sector who are allegedly queue jumping. But that doesn't happen, does it? Because we're not allowed to do that. Because if that actually does happen, we need to address all the people that have been doing that in the state system themselves for years, don't we? But we wouldn't do that because they're in the 93% club. They're impervious to any kind of criticism. So you can see where all of this has landed up, and it's given her egg on her face. But I will say, Adele, all power to your elbow for actually brazening it out. I mean, I can see you've retreated now because it did get awkward and there was really nowhere to go. You were backed into a bit of a corner. But at least you tried, you know. And Stephen Morgan, Jonathan Brash, actually no, not Jonathan Brash, he's just Bridget Phillipson, you can get on your socials and actually engage with the people that are giving you very coherent and weighty arguments as to why this policy has been not only the manifesto flagship, but the manifesto Titanic.